Welcome to Trending Unpacked, where we make sense of what the world is searching for.
And just like that, it's December. And for what, the better part of a decade now, this month brings this collective global moment of digital introspection.
That moment is, of course, the annual release of Spotify Wrapped 2025.
Mm.
I mean, for those of you who somehow managed to stay off social media, and honestly, I envy you, you really couldn't log on anywhere this year.
Oh, it's impossible to avoid.
Instagram, X, TikTok, it was just a complete blizzard of screenshots, those carefully made playlists, and of course the inevitable claims about being in the top 0.1% of some, incredibly niche artist.
It's so much more than a marketing campaign at this point. It's really become a kind of global cultural institution. Wrapped has gone way beyond just being a music review.
Right.
It's this massive social event where people use their own data, not just to compare stats, but I think to fundamentally affirm their identity or maybe even construct it for everyone to see.
It's the story of your year in sound, all packaged up with these super shareable graphics. So today, we're not just looking at a list of popular songs. We're really analyzing this huge slice of global self-expression of cultural psychology.
Yeah.
It's all fueled by those, hyper-specific breakdowns the platform gives you.
It's a reflection of how we cope, how we connect, how we learn.
So our mission today is to really unpack what the 2025 report is telling us. We want to go beyond the top 10 list.
We have to. What were the core habits this year? How is technology changing not just how we listen, but how music is even made? And what does this whole shared data moment reveal about, what we all aspired to in 2025?
That sounds like quite the task.
Ugh.
Okay, let's get into it, starting with the raw material itself. Let's do a case breakdown of the data and the features that really defined Wrapped 2025.
To set the stage, it's probably worth noting just how much this event now influences the entire music industry. Wrapped, as we know it, formally launched back in 2016, but it really hit this cultural event status
Very quickly.
incredibly quickly. By the early 2020s, it went from just a fun feature to a genuine economic driver.
And that economic impact is huge. We were seeing in the sources how this one data drop influences everything from a major label's marketing budget to when an artist decides to release an album.
Oh, absolutely. Artists are now structuring their whole year to peak during the Wrapped eligibility window. It's this entire ecosystem that's built around a single yearly data release.
It's wild. Okay, so turning to the actual trends in the 2025 report, what was the biggest global music trend?
The most striking finding, and this was consistent across almost every country, was the exponential surge in what the sources called globalized pop.
That felt completely unavoidable this year. My own rap playlist felt less like it came from one country and more like a United Nations summit of genres.
That is the perfect way to put it. We saw this unprecedented jump in successful cross-cultural collaborations and multilingual tracks that weren't just dominating one chart, but multiple global charts at the same time.
So we're not just talking about a K-pop star on a US track, it's something more blended.
Much more. Think about tracks where the verses switch between, say, Spanish, Portuguese, and English, all layered over a beat that borrows from Afrobeat and maybe some Indian folk elements. It's completely fluid.
So the music isn't just crossing borders anymore. It's being created without them in the first place. The data must suggest that for younger listeners especially, the vibe of the song just outweighs whether they can understand the lyrics.
Exactly. The whole idea of a single dominant Western cultural center dictating what the world listens to is it's genuinely falling apart. And this is supported by the second major trend.
Which was?
The continued and growing dominance of artists who have these massive, incredibly active online communities.
Does that mean the days of, spending a fortune on traditional radio promotion are just over, replaced by fans organizing online?
The sources certainly point that way. The strength of direct fan engagement and artists' ability to mobilize a dedicated base on Discord, on TikTok, on private forums, that now seems to far outweigh a traditional marketing push.
So the top songs got there because of coordinated, intense listening, not just broad, casual plays.
That's what the data shows. We're talking about community power literally showing up as data.
Can you give an example of what that mobilization looks like?
Yeah, the sources detailed some pretty specific tactics. Things like coordinated streaming parties on Discord servers where fans are assigned time slots to make sure the song gets maximum saturation.
Wow.
And they highlighted how short-form video challenges are used. One passionate fan can teach dozens of others how to use the audio, and that translates into hundreds of streams a day. It suggests that, tribal loyalty is the new marketing capital.
That's a level of emotional investment a billboard just can't compete with. Okay, let's shift to a more psychological trend that was really clear this year, the nostalgia resurgence.
This was a really fascinating shift in the data. It identified a very specific demographic, older listeners, specifically those who grew up in the mid-90s to early 2000s, who were engaging with genre nostalgia way, way more than before.
Is this just a comfort thing? The world feels chaotic, so we retreat into the music of our youth.
That's definitely the leading theory. The source material framed it as media consumption for emotional regulation. When there's a lot of uncertainty in the world, people gravitate towards things that feel predictable, emotionally safe. And this wasn't just a small bump, it was a major shift.
And when we say those genres, 90s, alternative, early 2000s, hip-hop, what specific sounds were spiking?
We saw huge engagement with that maximalist pop from around 2002 to 2005. Really dense production, very polished, almost abrasive electronic sounds.
I know exactly what you mean.
And in alternative music, the data pointed to a rise in the slightly angrier, more guitar-driven sounds of the late 90s. And what's crucial is that this music isn't just being heard by people who remember it.
Right, it's being discovered by younger listeners.
Through those viral audio clips on short-form video, it's this kind of generational recycling, all driven by digital access.
That paints a really clear picture. Let's move from genre to technology, because the 2025 Wrapped data had a really strong AI component. Specifically, AI-assisted music in the rankings.
Yes, and this needs some real clarity because it's such a hot-button issue. The sources were very clear. We are not talking about deepfake music.
Right, not the unauthorized cloning of famous voices for some illicit release.
Not at all. We are talking entirely about legitimate, professionally produced tracks where AI was a co-creator in the studio.
So how are artists actually using this tech to make hits? What does AI co-created even look like in practice?
The main uses were acceleration and generating complex variations. So instead of having an AI write a whole song, top artists were using these models to suggest complex chord progressions or harmonies a human might not think of right away, or to create custom royalty-free drum loops and sound effects. And the result was that producers could speed up their workflow by as much as 50%.
That is a massive data point. It suggests AI is just becoming another tool in the studio, like a synthesizer was 50 years ago. It's moving from a novelty to a collaborator.
Precisely. And the impact is undeniable. The sheer volume of high-quality AI-assisted releases this year was enough to actually affect the top 100 charts. It's a normalization of something the industry was really fighting just a couple years back.
Now moving to another digital medium, the podcast landscape. The sources detailed just continued, massive growth, but specifically in certain niches, right?
Yes, and the niches seeing the most growth were educational and news topics.
Which connects right back to that collective mood you mentioned. If nostalgia is for emotional comfort, these podcasts are for intellectual comfort.
It's the coping mechanism for uncertainty in a really complex world. Listeners are showing this dual habit, seeking comfort from music and seeking competence from information.
So it's not just true crime and celebrity interviews anymore.
Not at all. The big surge was in really focused, digestible content. Things like microdosing history or macroeconomic explainers. Deep, analytical looks at specific global issues. People in 2025 are clearly using media to help them synthesize and understand a world that can feel pretty overwhelming.
That sounds like it's perfectly tailored for our audience, for the learner, who wants to get up to speed on things quickly but thoroughly.
The data really suggests that this is a widespread global habit now. This appetite for structured analytical learning is a huge part of the 2025 consumption pattern.
Let's talk about the user experience itself. Wrapped is always evolving to be as viral as possible. What were the new features for 2025?
There were 3 main interactive features, all designed to increase how much people share and how personally relevant it feels. The first one was the social listening personality.
This was the one that was all over my social feeds. People debating if they were a communal connector or a sonic solipsist.
That's exactly it. It tries to categorize how you listen, not just what you listen to. And the data analysis behind it is pretty deep. It measures things like whether you mainly use music as background noise or if you're constantly sharing links with friends.
So it takes your passive listening habits and turns them into this active psychological profile you can share.
It's turning your data into an identity signal, but the sources suggest it also benefits the platform through something they call reciprocal data validation.
Meaning?
By giving you this personality type, it encourages you to share it, which validates the platform's data collection in the public eye. And that, in turn, attracts new users who want their own profile. It's a very effective viral loop.
Super effective. What was the second new feature?
That was the local scene spotlight. And this feature actively shifts the focus to hyperlocal trends, which is interesting because it kind of pushes against that globalized pop trend we just talked about.
That is a fascinating tension. The platform helps blur global borders, but then it also spends resources to highlight tiny local differences. Why do both?
It's a really smart strategic move to build community and loyalty. While global pop gets the most streams, the platform knows that local cultural pride is a huge long-term driver of engagement. So this feature would highlight, say, the top 3 breakout artists popular only within your city or state.
It gives smaller artists a real data point for their success, and it lets listeners feel unique to their city, not just another number in a global trend.
Exactly. And the third feature was the interactive yearbook remix experience. This was the most gamified element designed for maximum interaction.
This one really felt like the platform was leaning into the short-form video aesthetic.
Completely. You were encouraged to remix your top songs with new filters, custom captions, creating these highly stylized montages of your year. The key here was encouraging multiple shares.
How so?
By offering all these customizable templates, it pushed people to post different versions of their Wrapped results on different platforms. One for TikTok, a different one for Instagram stories, another for a static post on X. It just maximized the noise.
That's a clever way to just dominate the conversation. Okay, moving to geography. The regional data had some genuine surprises this year.
The geographical data was probably the most compelling proof that music power is diversifying away from just Western markets. The sources highlighted some genuinely unexpected breakout artists in huge listening regions like India, Brazil, and the Philippines.
Can you get more specific? Like, what was so surprising in a market like Brazil?
In Brazil, the data showed the explosive rise of a specific regional genre. We can call it a kind of sertanejo funk fusion that had only just started incorporating modern electronic and reggaeton sounds. And this hyperlocal genre actually surged past international giants like Taylor Swift or Drake in local streams.
A huge win for a very regional sound.
A completely unexpected one. And in the Philippines, we saw this massive, unforeseen spike in homegrown folk pop and acoustic singer-songwriters.
What the local market calls OPM revival.
Exactly. This genre, with its intricate acoustic arrangements and lyrics in Tagalog about local issues, it just created this completely unique sound that broke all the platform's local engagement records. It was almost a rejection of that high-production global sound in favor of something more authentic.
And in a complex market like India.
India's top artists showed how fast tastes are changing. They move beyond the established Bollywood sounds into indie, regional language rap, especially from the Punjabi and Tamil scenes, and these hyper-local EDM subgenres. It's just happening at breakneck speed.
So these regions aren't just consuming global music anymore. They're generating and defining their own powerful sonic identities.
And digital platforms are the engine that's making that possible.
Okay, that covers the raw data. Now let's shift to the cultural side. What did people do with this information? Let's get into the internet theories and cultural interpretations.
This is where the psychology of it all really comes into focus. The sheer volume of sharing tells you that Wrapped is now, as the sources frame it, an annual digital mirror. It reflects our moods, our habits, our coping mechanisms.
So if my rap says, I listen to 8,000 hours of upbeat 80s synth pop, I might read that as me trying to cope with a tough year. The data confirms my own internal story.
Precisely. It takes a subjective feeling and makes it objective with data points. But because you share it publicly, that reflection immediately becomes a performance. And that leads to the core social phenomenon here, data self-expression.
Using your personal stats to project a specific digital personality. It's a very modern way of signaling who you are, isn't it?
It really is. People are using their minutes listened, their niche genre choices, the obscurity of their top artists. It's all a social badge. I am deep, I am nostalgic, I am cosmopolitan. The popularity of Wrapped is tied directly to this intense desire to use platform-verified data as an identifier.
It provides the proof for a micro-identity. And all of this is, of course, amplified by the influencer feedback loop.
The sources documented this loop perfectly. Content creators immediately turn their Wrapped results into more content reaction videos, guess my vibe challenges. That content drives huge search spikes, which gets more people interested, which just fuels the whole viral cycle for the platform.
It's a perfectly closed system. The platform provides the tool, and the influencers do the marketing for free.
But that pressure to present a certain kind of identity can lead to some interesting behaviors. We need to talk about the algorithmic influence and the theory that the desire for cool stats actually changes how people listen all year long.
This suggests that Wrapped isn't just a passive recorder of our taste, it's an active driver of it.
Exactly. If you know that listening to only super niche genres will give you a cooler Wrapped card in December, maybe one that calls you a deep cuts devotee, you might deliberately avoid mainstream hits in November. Or you might binge listen to an obscure artist just to get them in your top 5.
We're performing for the algorithm's end-of-year report card, curating our habits to get a better social result. It raises a huge question about whether the data is even organic anymore.
It's this fascinating layer of meta-consumption. It makes it almost impossible to isolate what's true, uninfluenced behavior. The sources suggest this self-consciousness is just a permanent part of streaming culture now.
And we can't talk about listening behavior without talking about the massive influence of TikTok. The data showed a huge correlation between Wrapped trends and viral audio clips from that platform, right? The TikTok echo chamber is still the biggest discovery engine.
That confirmation was central to the 2025 report. A 10-second audio clip that goes viral in August can directly translate into millions of streams that put a song in the top 10 months later. The data proved it. If an audio clip trends on short-form video, it will define December's Wrapped.
But where there's data, there are always theories. Let's touch on the conspiracy theories that Wrapped might be subtly promoting certain artists or genres for business reasons.
This is tied to that general anxiety people have about how algorithms work. Now, the sources found no direct proof of this, but the theory suggests that because the platform has business deals with major labels, or maybe wants to push a new genre it's invested in,
The algorithm might just happen to surface that content a little more often in months leading up to the report.
Exactly. The anxiety isn't that the summary is wrong, but that the journey to get to that summary was nudged a bit to help the platform's bottom line. It becomes a conversation about whether you can trust the data you're being shown. And these deeper conversations led to broader societal discussions. The sheer detail and psychological accuracy of Wrapped 2025 led to a lot of commentary that it's basically become a definitive digital personality test.
It kind of forces you into this reductive box based on whatever the platform decides to measure.
Yeah.
Am I just on my listening minutes? Is my music taste really the sum total of my identity?
And that level of personalization, the ability to give you a summary of your emotional state, immediately reignited the privacy debate. When a platform can accurately guess your mood, your schedule, your interests, just from your listening habits.
It really highlights how much personal information is constantly being logged and interpreted.
The debate this year wasn't just about data logging. It was more about whether the psychological accuracy of the 2025 Wrapped knowing your precise mood from your listening patterns crossed some kind of ethical line, even if the data is technically anonymous.
The convenience of getting this cool, validating summary is balanced against the cost of knowing you are that well known by a corporation. Wrapped makes that tension very visual and extremely shareable. That brings us to our final section, the analysis and takeaway. We need to synthesize what this all means.
Let's start with the collective mood that Wrapped 2025 seems to reveal. We have these 4 big trends: globalized pop, AI assistants, educational podcasts, and that 90s 2000s nostalgia. What story do they tell together?
To me, it sounds like a combination of intense curiosity and a desire for global connection. You see that in the news consumption and the borderless music, but combined with this deep need for stability and emotional security, which is the nostalgia.
The sources suggest this reflects a world that's just grappling with accelerated change. People are using media for learning, for connection, and crucially for emotional regulation. The data proves that our coping mechanisms and our consumption habits are completely linked.
And that analysis extends to our relationship with technology. Why do these hyper-personalization rituals like Wrapped continue to just dominate the cultural conversation every year?
Because they fulfill a really fundamental human need for self-affirmation through data. We want to be seen and categorized and understood by these powerful systems we rely on, even if we're also a little bit wary of them. Wrapped gives you this momentary, quantifiable validation.
It validates your identity while also feeding your data right back into the machine that will curate your experience for next year. Which brings us back to that core tension, identity versus algorithm.
This is the biggest philosophical question the data raises. How much of your identity is genuinely reflected in your Wrapped summary? And how much is just a feedback loop created by the algorithm's influence? Something we could call algorithmic reciprocity.
So if the algorithm sees that I like high BPM workout music on Monday mornings, it starts feeding me more of it until my Wrapped summary confirms that, yep, I'm a predictable Monday morning high BPM listener.
It becomes almost impossible to separate your organic taste from the algorithmic suggestions once you're in the system. The platform is giving you a mirror, but the platform also manufactured the glass and chose the frame for it. The 2025 report really solidified this dynamic as a permanent part of our digital lives.
A lot to think about there. Okay, let's look forward. Based on this year's data, what are we predicting for future trends in entertainment?
The first major prediction comes from that AI data. The normalization of AI-assisted music points to a future where human-AI collaboration is not just accepted, but totally expected. We're moving past the debates about authenticity and into a world where AI is just another tool in the creative kit.
It'll become a baseline expectation for high-level production. And the second prediction comes from those regional surprises.
Yes, this points to a truly diversified global entertainment ecosystem. The future will rely far less on the centralized pipelines of New York or Los Angeles. The rise of breakout artists in India, Brazil, the Philippines. It proves that local scenes, empowered by digital distribution, can now dominate globally without needing that traditional Western stamp of approval.
A fragmentation of cultural power, which, for listeners, means a richer, more complex, and hopefully more surprising sonic future.
A fitting end to a complex data year.
This has been a fascinating look at how data doesn't just track culture, it actively shapes it. If I had to pick the biggest revelation from the 2025 data, for me it would be the way AI co-creation just became completely invisible and normalized in the charts. That's a huge technological shift that's already happened.
And for me, I'd highlight that profound psychological split we saw in the collective mood. This desperate search for intellectual competence through news podcasts, right next to the emotional retreat into 90s and noughties nostalgia. The question I'd leave you with is this. When you look at your own personalized data summary, are you seeing your genuine past self? Or are you seeing the hyper-curated persona the algorithm helped you build and then encouraged you to share?
Something to mull over until next December's report drops. Thank you for joining us for this analysis of digital identity and algorithmic mirrors.
Next episode, we shift from digital trends to environmental alarms as we unpack the developing story around the Tehran drought and why it's suddenly spiking in global searches.